Dear Heavenly Father, I'd just like to thank you for everything that you have given us on this day. I'd like to thank you for this trip that we just had. I'd like to thank you for the camaraderie that I have with the good friends of mine, along with my wife and everybody else that I've came in contact with. I also like to thank you for the forgiveness that you have given us in this life and the free will so that we can also make choices and try to reflect you as much as possible. Please, Lord, forgive us for all our sins, and in Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. Is that a little foreshadowing?
Little foreshadowing? It might be. Dun, dun, dun! What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Skeptics Podcast episode
27.
27.
I'm on that.
I was talking about it with Brock in the car yesterday.
Yeah.
That we've already done 20 episodes.
Yeah.
And like how consistent we've been able to be pretty much.
For sure, yeah.
Also, something else, I want to say shout out to a friend of mine named Christina. We're going to start putting clips on TikTok and on Instagram. So I got the Instagram account set up.
Nice.
I think I did that a while ago.
Yeah.
And then I got a TikTok account set up. So I'm going to start trying to upload a clip every Monday. The full podcast will come out on Wednesday, and then there will be a clip probably on Wednesday or
Did she help you get those set up?
Friday.
Or like
more or less the idea.
Oh, okay.
Because I've been thinking about it, but I was trying to think how the placement of everything should be.
Yeah.
Because you don't want all the clips to come out before, because then there's no reason to go watch the other podcast. Because I think, like, especially for me with other people's podcasts, I find all kind of good bits and pieces in between the main topics. But we're forgetting a very important piece right now. John Boy, how are you doing?
Man, I'm actually doing pretty good. I forgot my ibuprofen at the house. Like, I literally bought some before we went on our trip.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, yes. Because I normally keep some in my backpack just in case.
Right.
Got a little crick in my neck. But besides that, doing pretty good.
As I just popped my neck here on the thing. So we're going to get to talk about this a little bit of story time action. But it's going to go into some interesting things that we're going to get to talk about. So I'll tell my side, and then John Boy can tell his side.
Yeah.
So we went on a camping trip. It's just a one-day trip. And we went on this trail to the place, and it turned out to be like super muddy. It's been snowing here for the last couple days, and now it's starting to kind of dry out, so everything's wet.
Yeah,
as it should be. Just kidding. But we were all just sliding around everywhere. So 3 of the 4 vehicles had 4-wheel drive, and it was even tough at some points for the 4-wheel drive truck to get through the thing. And then we were also following each other in a convoy that was a lot too close. We have figured out at this point, like, if you're the 2-wheel drive guy, being John Boy, you probably need to be like in the front so you could just floor it the whole time.
Yeah, pretty much. If I would have had that punched in, my directions, and known where I was going, I could have just gunned it. And then just I could have just been there, and then when y'all showed up, you showed up.
Right. But it was also, mind you, it got like 18 last night, and we all managed to kind of sleep through it and everything. Another friend of ours, he ended up getting a tent. And anyways, it was all in all, it was a pretty good time.
Yeah, yeah.
But one thing that we're going to get to talk about a little bit later here is patience when it comes to different things. So he knows this. All the other guys know this. I love full-wheel driving and off-roading and all that jazz. Yeah. I just don't like doing it when it's dark.
Yeah.
Because, like, even if I don't really know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we were following our buddy Boss, and he seemed to know where he was going, so we didn't really have any problems on that end. But it took us a lot longer, I think, than we thought, and that was not even because it was really wet. It was just a lot longer trail than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that was a very long route.
Yeah.
Like, when they were like, let's just go this way, it's just a little bit longer. I was like, okay, a little bit longer was quite a bit shorter in my mind.
Yeah. So there was a bunch of times where we had the communication was the key on all that, and my radio sucked for whatever reason, and it couldn't pick up half the people.
Yeah, if there's a commo guy watching this, somebody who knows about radios, please hit us up,
because we had some GMRS radios, and you were using the rugged one, weren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, I was using the Talk Pro one that Boss has, but I also had the rugged one there. It just wasn't charged. For whatever reason, I could hear them, and half the time they couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
So John was right behind me, and we were going through this trail. I'm talking slinging mud everywhere. I mean, it sounds terrible. And I'm having to navigate with the guys in the front via my radio not working, and then honking with John being behind me to try to find a spot to where I could stop and he could like get on my rear end and it still be dry enough. But the patience of the whole team was involved. But your patience, I was like, what's the word I'm looking for here? It was very commendable, if that's really the right word. I was like, John Boy's got a lot of patience when it comes to this stuff, because I could definitely see how that could be aggravating for sure.
Yeah.
But
well, there's a multi-piece to that, because I almost talked about it with the guys, but then nobody brought it up. So I was like, it doesn't seem like a big deal. I'll leave it alone. Let me just break it down this way. So when we're out wheeling, I just call it wheeling. I don't say four-wheeling because I'm not a four-wheel.
You got four wheels.
Well, I do have four wheels.
You got four wheels.
Only two of them spin. So
I'm thinking of that Drake and Caleb Presley thing over and over again. It's like, no, Drake, you say it all the time. He goes, I don't, but I know you do. No.
I literally heard you say
yeah,
it.
exactly.
But the thing is like, I also hate holding everybody else up. So I feel like every time I'm the one who gets stuck, now I'm holding up everybody else. And so, like, that's a level of frustration. Okay? And then it's the fact that I'm stuck is frustrating. And then it's the fact that, like we're kind of, like, stopping in these, like, really hard
wet
to,
spots.
like, move around spots. And so it's like, let's everybody stop right in front of the biggest mud hole on the trail. And I'm just like, and I think I held it, and I stayed pretty quiet most of the time. And the only time I can recall, like, letting any of it out is when you were coming to me and you were like, there's nothing I can do when they stop in front of me. And I was like, well, what the F do y'all want me to do?
Yeah, I remember that part.
But I think that's the only time I said anything. And it's only because it was like, at that point, I'm like, there's literally nothing I can do.
Right. So let's use that as an example. Walk me through how that you were able to make that like nonchalant. Because I have seen you in the past get frustrated about things. Why was that time not one of them?
Well, I've gotten better about it. That's I would say, like, my agitation level, I've been trying to get that to where it's higher and higher. Like, it takes more and more to get me to a point where, like, I'm going to lose it. Because I think that's how everybody should be. They should be working to a point where you're not letting these little things, because, like, it doesn't matter today.
Right.
And so I'm working on not letting this stuff get me so worked up is a piece of it. That's a big piece. It's just thinking it through. And so what I do is I find myself stuck, and I'm like, great. I feel like I'm holding up the team. And so there's nothing to do now but then to get it unstuck. Mm-hmm. So just get to work. Mm-hmm. That's my mindset on it. Is the quicker I get to work and get this truck unstuck, the better everything will turn out. And so that's the biggest key is, like, as soon as you can get to work on fixing whatever the problem is that's causing you to be frustrated, get to fixing it.
Right.
So if your frustration is caused by being stuck, you better start figuring out how to be unstuck. Like, that's the key. And you could do that about anything. If your biggest frustration is the dirty dishes in the sink every day when you get home, then make that the first thing you do when you get home.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I've been thinking about things and trying to overcome getting aggravated.
How much do you think? I 1,000% agree exactly what you said.
Yeah.
I actually don't think you could have said it better when you said when you're stuck, find the way to get unstuck. Because we're talking about in the sense of our trip.
Literally, I'm stuck.
But life.
Yeah.
Like, if you're stuck, just find a way to try to get out of it. And it sounds a lot easier than what it is to stay in that.
Well, it sounds a lot easier than what it is when you actually, even with the truck.
Right.
Like, we was winching, and I think my winch is pretty substantial, but I was to the point where we're winching, and I'm like, we're not moving.
Yeah, he was very slow.
I was like, and that was the first time I've ever had it winch like that bad.
That's a huge part of life, though. Now that I just thought about it. It was slow, but you got out of it, though.
Yeah.
The other question I wanted to ask, because I wonder how much this plays a plays a factor in it, because I think you kind of touched on it a little bit when we were telling the story, is how much does your environment make an impact on it? Like we already said, number one, like you said, I'm stuck. Let's figure out a way to get stuck. But did your environment, meaning in this case the stuck, us, making it better? Because at one time you were saying, I don't want to hold up the team. And then you were like, I guess it was the time we were all running down there and somebody was getting hyped over you getting stuck. And then you said it was like, but the guys seemed to be cool about it.
Right.
So how much like would you say that played a factor into it, or did it really not play a factor into it at all?
I don't think it factored too much for me, only for the sheer fact that it's the way I feel about it. And so sometimes you get so caught up, I know I do at least, in how I feel that I almost exclude how the team feels about it. Like I didn't even think to ask. And that's why I didn't bring it up, because nobody else seemed to be affected.
Right.
But I almost was like, sorry guys, I'm stuck a second time. Like that's super aggravating for me.
Right.
But nobody else seemed to be aggravated by it.
No.
And
we were all just ready to just help out.
So there's no point in me saying sorry, because nobody seems frustrated.
Right.
Except for me.
Right.
So
it might just be a little bonus.
Yeah.
On top of it, because like,
and I will say this, because the environment, I think there's a two-part. One, most people I think get anxious when there's a lot of people watching them, and then they don't know how to perform. Whereas like that is something I've learned how to overcome. And I always reference like backing up a boat when you're at like a 250 boat tournament and it's somebody else's truck and boat, and you're backing up like $350,000 worth of somebody else's stuff, and they're just like, all right, go ahead.
Right. And
you're like, oh my gosh. And now there's all these other like guys who do it all the time watching you. That's helped me, but not enough people get that. Like having to do something in front of a crowd. And so even though it's a small amount, there was only 1, 2, 3, 5 guys watching me. At the end of the day, I know y'all are pulling for me.
Right.
You know, and so, but also I was going to say the fact that we were like out in the woods, there's a certain level of like peace that brings me. Whereas like if I was here at your house and I got stuck in the yard, which would be like really gay.
Yeah.
Compared to like being like on a trail and getting stuck.
Right.
And now everybody's watching. There's going to be a different level of frustration.
That's true.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that though? Like, should that level of frustration be there? Well, because in the case of scenario, I know it brings you peace, but I'd say other people, like not any of us that was in the group, but you imagine people that's like not real keen to nature, they be flipping balls when they're stuck in the woods. They don't know where they are in the middle of the dark.
Well, it's funny because like my default is like I'm gonna turn into Davy Crockett. Like that's what my mind thinks.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if it broke down and I had to get it stuck out here, I'm gonna shoot a deer and eat it.
That's it.
I'm gonna have a good time.
Like we get the coon hat on, and you're like, I'm about to go to town,
dude.
So that's the environmental questions. It's interesting to me because in moments to where it's like I've tried to kind of keep my stature, be patient about it, kind of keep calm and everything like that. For me, I don't know if it plays a whole lot, kind of like what you said. It might be the little bit of icing on the top, but it's funny how that icing on the top, if it wasn't there and it was the opposite, it could just make the whole situation terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like your buddy's coming down and hyping you up.
Right.
It's cool, but I still got to get to work and get my thing done.
Yeah.
If they come down and just start talking crap, it just goes downhill fast.
So I think that's what my mind... That may be why I default to being super aggravated.
Right.
Is because I can take that approach quickly. Like, it's a lot easier for me to expect somebody to be like, oh, you got stuck again? Or like, why would you bring a 2-wheel drive on a trail like this?
Right.
And like, it's a lot easier for me to escalate that than it is to de-escalate.
Sure. For sure.
And so I think that's why I default that way. And that's why I'm trying to not. And so I'm conscious of it, and I'm always trying to make the conscious effort, especially whenever, and we keep talking about like the team. I like using that word because it really is teamwork. And I struggle even with like, we used the traction boards at one point to get my truck out, and the Codys were carrying them. I didn't even ask.
Yeah.
They just picked them up.
Yeah.
They're covered in mud. Pick them up, and they're carrying them to me. And like Allender, I was like, here, I can grab that, you know. And then by the time we get the truck, I got the Brock, and I was like, Brock, here, I'll grab that one too.
Right.
But like, I don't ever want to have to make somebody else work if I'm the one who's caused the problem. So if being stuck is the problem,
Right.
I don't want anybody else to have to help put any effort. But because it's actually a team effort and everybody wants to succeed and get to the campsite,
Right.
that's something I'm realizing now in life.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't know why it's taken me so long to get there. I don't know if I had something to prove, if it's ego, or if I just felt like I couldn't count on people. Maybe it's a trust thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm starting to learn that, and it's like these guys are pulling for me.
You know, you hear a lot of people, a lot more when it's in relationships, but friends do the same thing where it's like you should want your friend or your significant other to be like a cheerleader.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's definitely times for that to where you do want, but you want them to be a team player.
Yeah.
Like you want them to, like a cheerleader.
Right.
They may not, like I said, and there's times for it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is bad whatsoever, but because when Cammie's doing horse things, I'm her cheerleader, essentially.
Right.
Like, I'm her team member at the same time, but when she's physically out there riding, I'm not doing anything but watching and cheering.
Right.
Like, there's nothing really that I'm doing in this spot. But when you're a team player, like you said, when your buddies go and grab something before you even think about it, and they're like, well, let's get out of this situation. Yeah. And it's not let's get you out of this situation. Let's get us out of this situation.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know, it's the coolest feeling in the world.
Well, and I think because we also was able to go to the range, which I always enjoy. And so that's an exact moment that just comes to my mind is I'm thinking about Allender.
Yeah.
And he shot the fastest time. And then he goes, but I think you're probably the best shooter talking to me.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I appreciate that. I said, but I'm not the one that shot the 14.
Right.
So good job, dude. Like, you killed it.
Right.
I think that's the difference between, like, cheerleading, because that's kind of what I felt like he was trying to do is he was like, he's like, man, I bet you're the best, even though you didn't have the fastest time.
Right.
And then that's where it becomes a team aspect because I fire back. Like, if I'd have said nothing, then it's just a cheerleading type of thing where he's, like, encouraging me.
Right.
But then I think when you start working back and forth, and it's like, nah, dude, mad respect to you because you performed.
Right.
So that's just the facts.
No, I mean, I think that just goes to show you see how much more productive it is when people are cheering you on versus like getting you frustrated about something. Like we were talking about great discussion that we all had last night about things that drives you. And and it's not that there's anything wrong with it. I read a book called Choose Your Enemies Wisely, and by Patrick B. David. The whole book is about find the one thing that is your enemy that drives you to the next level. And and a lot of people's is somebody did me wrong in the past, and I'm going to essentially show them that I can do better.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to hear kind of all of our aspects because then it got us into the conversation of, does that make one person more driven than the other person? Is if you're doing it to try to show somebody up or you want to give like a big F you to the world or you're just like, I want to be really, really good at whatever this one scenario is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think it makes a difference?
I think it does depending like on the type of person, right? So like for you, it's different than for me. And so the first thing I go back to is a story like with my dad and how something that he talked about with me when it comes to competing. I can remember my dad, he used to race dirt track. He says that there was one day he was out there racing, and I can't remember if they were hot lapping. I think they were hot lapping, and this guy like spun him out. And so he had to start at the back of the pack for the actual race, and he was pissed. And my grandpa said that's one of the best times Mel ever raced is because he was pissed that this guy, like he was in like second. So he was going to start second from the hot laps, or you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I got you.
And then he had but then he got spun out of wherever, so he had to start from the back.
Right.
And so I think he ended up winning because he was so pissed that they had to start him in the back on like the final lap of the hot lap. He gets spun out.
Right.
And so he goes to win the race. And his dad goes, dude, you need to do that every time because you won. Whatever happened, whatever switch triggered in your mind, you won because of that. Because that's the same car you raced with last time when you got third. But today something was different. And it's the fact that you were pissed that they spun you out. And so it wasn't that the car was faster. It was the mentality of it. Now, yes, there are factors. I mean, the track could be different from the last time, et cetera, depending on how they treat it. I mean, there are other factors, but that's a big one, is your attitude towards the goal that you're trying to achieve. Whereas with you, you've talked about it before, like your basketball coach or somebody was like, you need to get pissed.
Yeah.
And you were like, that doesn't work for me.
No, I suck.
Right. And so that's why I think it's so crucial to you need to try and figure out as a person what is your driving factor. You know, for like me, I've had some of those moments where it's like somebody tells you can't do something, and whatever it is in your mind, like that day was decided, I'm going to prove them wrong. And then you do. And it's like whatever level of satisfaction that you're seeking, if you get that from that, then that's your driving factor. Now, let's say you want that. Let's say you want to prove somebody wrong and you make it there and it doesn't make you feel any different. Well, then that's just what you thought it was. That's like a fake reason.
Right.
That's just some of my take on it.
I wonder if there's any passage in the Bible that talks about that. Because I don't see their.
I think there is.
Do you know it?
No, I don't know it but I just know like the overarching teaching that like the Bible would be like, you know, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. And so like if somebody disrespects you, then treat them with kindness. Now I'm not saying like go out of your way and like become successful and then be a dick to that person.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm saying, like, if somebody tells me I can't do something and then I go do it, don't rub it in their face, but that satisfaction can be my own.
Yeah, and you could even, you know how wild it would be, like, say something like that happened, and then it's like, you go up to that guy after that, and say, like you said, you're not being a dick or anything.
Yeah.
But you just go up and you say, dude, I just want to let you know, you drove me to do this. Like if it was not for you, and like I said, you don't even have to bring up the instance. Just say, hey, in the past there was something that you said to me that drove me to the next spot.
Yeah.
Whether it was something mean, maybe it was something that was not like really mean, but it was just kind of like I don't really know if that's possible or whatever. But
yeah.
I wish I could channel that energy sometimes.
Right.
I wish I could be like, you know what, I'm about to show that person. But it's like, I don't know why, but I definitely think it does hold back a little bit of my drive because it's like I see it happen for everybody else. I'm like, dude, do I need to? Not because hate's not the word, but it's like, do I need to seek so much competition in that it drives me to do something else? Because like, I know that we've also we've talked about it a little bit. I just lost my train of thought. Would you consider yourself a competitive guy?
Kind of, yeah.
Like, okay, dive into that a little bit deeper.
There's moments where I can't help it, especially if there's something that I feel like I'm good at. So like if me and you go fishing, and it's not so much these days. It used to be a lot worse. Which I think is because and it's funny as I'm saying it because I'm only 25, but I've calmed down some since realizing some of these things, and maybe there was other feelings that it brings on too that aren't as good. Mm-hmm. Like drive that's a good one, but then you have other ones that aren't as good. But let's say me and you go fishing, and then you catch a fish, and then I catch one, but mine's smaller than yours, And then I'm not going to be ready to leave until I catch one bigger than your fish because I know that I'm capable of it. And so, like,
See, I think that's I understand what you're saying.
it sounds petty.
Because it's like, I don't even think it's that, though. I think it's actually a good thing. It's like when we go to the range with each other, that one thing you told me that I want to be so good that it drives y'all to be better than me.
Yeah.
And it's like that kind of competition I love.
Yeah.
It's like we're going to go up there and we're going to try to beat each other.
Yeah.
But you are at the same time with just wanting yourself to increase because at no time in our entire lives will it be betting on me and you competing against each other. There's
Right.
not a scenario where that happens.
Yeah.
So, unless one of us became a terrorist, but and that does not happen. But it also builds almost like a revelation inside you that's like, that dude's got my back because I've seen him be able to do what he is.
Right.
One of the coolest things I've listened to lately was on Sean Ryan's podcast. It was Haley's strategic guy that was on there.
Yeah.
Travis Haley.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about, kind of sad story, but it was cool ending. But he was talking about going to one of his funerals for one of his buddies that died. And this guy died in battle. Like it wasn't nothing else. He died in battle. And he didn't know how to take it. I think it was one of his first ones that he lost or whatever. And he said one of his teammates came up beside him and hit him on the back while they're looking at his coffin and was like, "Isn't this awesome?" And he was like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
He was like, "My buddy's in there." He was like, "What do you mean? Is it awesome?" He goes, "Is it awesome to know that guy will go all the way for you, no matter what?" And he did. That's what's. I mean, that's ended up why he ended up dying. I think he ended up saving somebody.
Yeah.
He was like, to know somebody that went all the way.
Yeah.
And I was like, that flips every single thing that you ever think about to where it's like, just like that one thing. Shout out Miranda, because you went with us, didn't you? To Miranda's grandma's.
No, I was not able to make that.
I love so much that now instead of a funeral, it's a celebration of life.
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing in the world.
For sure.
Because that changes every single person's mindset to, we were talking about when you say you lose a bad relationship or a bad friend or whatever the heck it is, and it's like you can only think of the good things about it.
Yeah.
It's like that's times 10 when you go into something like, this person had an awesome life, or this person was a cool person, or whatever the heck it was. And I don't know how I got off on that subject, but it's so cool to me.
Well, I think that is an interesting thing, and I want to talk about that a little bit. That's partially why I listen to and enjoy some of these like military guys who they're post-military now, the bulk of them, so they're not in it anymore. But there's a reason why I'm so drawn to certain types. And don't get me wrong, there's bad ones and there's good ones in all aspects. But the reason why I like the guys who are like specialists in combat, like that's what they specialize in. Because you have guys who specialize in everything.
Oh, for sure.
But the ones that specialize in combat, and you hear these stories of people who I consider to be absolute heroes, and it's like, it's hard to even like understand if you don't think in a similar fashion. Because I can't think of the one guy's name, but there's one story of a guy, and it's some special forces guys clearing a house, and a grenade gets dropped down the staircase. It's a 2-story building, and a bad guy drops a grenade. The guy literally, not even a second passes, and he just jumps on the grenade.
Crazy.
And it takes him out, but everybody else survived. And one of the survivors was talking about it. He was like, the fact that guy, like as soon as they seen it hit the ground, there wasn't even time for anybody to say anything, and he jumps on it because he knows that like that's his people, that's his family,
Right.
and he's there to put it all on the line. And there's something about that I find so commendable. And like that's a guy who's living his values to the max. He's willing to do everything, including losing his own life, to like live out what he stands for.
It's kind of a tough question, but I think I know the answer to it. The question I'm asking is, should we all be like that?
Well,
And the reason I ask that is because for us at least, the one man that we strive to be most like, he did do that.
yeah.
I mean, for everybody.
Yeah.
So it's like, should everybody? That's a weird. I mean, it's almost kind of a dark thing to think about.
I like to think of it in a light way, in a very.
No. I agree with you, but it can be like if you sit there and go down a road.
You could try and take it that way if you wanted to, but I have a hard time even seeing it in that light for the sheer fact that, like, I want you to even think about it like this. Let's say that we're at Walmart and somebody comes to shoot the store up, and we actually had a little bit of a talk about this, but let's say I go to engage and I get the guy, but he also gets me. I get the bad guy, right? But I also die in
the process.
Yes. There's something about that. Like, even if none of you were there, none of the people who I care about the most, but I know that, like, innocent women and children and men were saved. There's something about that is peaceful.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
It's almost like I know that what I did wasn't in vain. I didn't do this all for nothing.
Right.
And so I think that's the piece. It doesn't even have to be for somebody that you know. If you did the right thing, and that's...
Yeah.
I mean...
That's what me and Brock were talking about, because we got on the... Because I think this... I've been saying this a lot lately, and it's dorky. It doesn't sound cool, but I've been saying a ton, remember that you're the good guy.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't sound near as cool as, like, the superhero or the hero or anything. Just that you're the good guy. Because in any situation that essentially may come of some kind of violent fact.
Yeah.
That, yeah, you could do this or you could do that or you could do this, but what – because say you didn't do that scenario and you were somebody that – say you were somebody that you strived in your life to be some sort of protector. Most men are some sort of protectors.
Right.
And I say that not even saying like you don't have to be the alpha of whatever.
We're not saying you have to be like 6'6", 250 pounds.
By no means.
A boxer.
I don't even say you have to like violence.
No.
But whoever that one guy that was like, you should be a gardener, but you should also know how to fight or something like that. I would rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a warrior in a war. Yeah. And I was like, that's such a good thing.
Yeah.
But in scenarios like that, what do you think goes through someone's mind to be able to do that? Because obviously not everybody's like that.
Well, and I do think there's levels to it, and there's going to be guys who, like, if like me saying those things, they're going to be like, oh, well, he thinks that he's willing to put it all on the line, and I think I am willing to, but there's going to be.
I actually also think the more you say it, I think, and people's gotten on to me for this in the past. Like, the more you say it, the more you believe it. So what?
Well, I think it's because you normalize it. Once you make that normal,
right? Like, why is that such a bad thing? Like, if I'm going to tell people that if I go by a school one day and it's getting shot up, that I'm going to go in and do something, I don't give a crap if you sit there and you tell me I'm not going to. I'm going to continue saying I am, because hopefully. Or not. Well, not hopefully. I don't hope that scenario ever happens.
Right.
But if I come upon that kind of scenario, I want to be.
You pray that you rise to the occasion.
I want to be ready in my own, not only just my skills to do everything. I want to be ready in my own mind that I can. I'm going to go in here and try to be the good guy. It might not work. Like I said, you might go in there, and you might end up getting shot and not even put the guy down. But that might have been less time that somebody else could have been shot. And in the end, I think you'll realize I was a good guy.
Yeah.
And because we say it on here all the time now. I think we need more heroes to step up. I wish that was one thing the military would point out. And I know it's kind of hard sometimes because whether you think like we should have done something or we shouldn't have done something.
Right.
But a lot of these people, like you said, they are heroes.
Yeah.
They have saved some sort of innocent life somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can't sit there and hate on them because half the time they're just getting orders to do stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that was the one thing I told Cody Brock. I said, if I ever, we were talking about if I ever had a kid that goes in the military, and he said, would you be okay with it? And I said, the only thing I would tell my kid if they in the military is, no matter what, I want you to remember that you're the good guy.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to sit there and tell yourself you're the good guy if you're doing something bad.
Right.
But I want you to be able to be like, I don't need to do that because I'm the good guy.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing the military should be doing right now is normalizing these heroes.
Yeah.
Like, we should be hearing about these way more than other crap.
Yeah. Well, that's like, I think me and you talked about this, like the whole Christian Craighead thing.
Yeah.
And how, like, his own country wouldn't even come out and talk about it. Why? I have such a hard time understanding. And I see the picture they're trying to paint. They're trying to say, like, well, he's rogue, and he just went out and did this on his own without any approval.
Right.
Well, there's no time for that.
Yeah, there's no time.
There's people who are just regular people who don't even have the ability to protect themselves, especially in these other countries like that, where he was at. I think it was in Africa.
Something like that.
And it's like, what are these families in this hotel going to do against a group of guys who go in here guns a-blazing?
Right.
And then you have one guy who luckily had great experience and great training and wanted to be, because I listened to him talk to Grantham about it.
Yeah.
As from a kid, he wanted to be like a Rambo type guy.
Yeah.
And so it's very fortunate that he was there and able to help those people.
Yeah, I love his story. It's one of the coolest things ever because if you think about it, all those people that did talk some kind of crap about it, they're all basing off of like a what if.
Yeah.
Like, what if he went in there and he missed a shot? Or what if he went in there and he got other people shot? Or and all this other stuff. But it's like nobody sits down and is like, we took out, or he, by himself, from my understanding, took out these people and saved the lives of thousands. Like I don't even know if there was a incident with any other person besides a bad guy that the bad guys didn't do.
Right.
Like, I don't know if there was I doubt there was a missed shot and it hit some civilian behind or something like that.
Yeah.
And see that stuff should motivate these groups to be like, we're the best, and we strive to be the best. This is the standard.
Yeah,
is that we had a guy running here by himself, with his own kit, and take care of business and not have one missed casualty.
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, I don't understand why that's not the thing.
Well, that's like I was listening to some Special Forces guys the other day, and I know everybody's like, well, you can't base what you do, especially as a civilian, off of a guy whose whole life is dedicated to being like a SF operator. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, actually, I can base my life on whatever I want.
As a civilian, especially in America, we can literally do pretty much anything we want.
Yep.
And why would you not choose to have the best be your the people who set the standard? Like why would you be like, you know what? At 50 yards, 10 MOA is acceptable accuracy out of a gun that can shoot 2.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
That's the standard I want. That's okay. That's worthless to me, I think.
Right.
Like that doesn't seem like a good standard to hold yourself accountable against.
Right.
Versus a guy who's like the best in the world. And so my point with that is I was listening to these guys, and DJ Shipley was talking about they got so good at being quiet that they would go in the house and nobody would even get woke up.
It's crazy.
He was like,
it's so crazy.
He's like, and we would wake the guy up and we'd grab him and we'd carry him out the door, and nobody ever knew we even kidnapped him. He's like, we never fired a round.
That's insane.
And he was like, does it work every time? No.
No.
He said, but there's nothing that you could do at a higher level
Right.
than something like that. He was like, we were literally like that's being a spec ops guy to him, you know?
Yeah.
And then I heard another guy who talked about it, and he was like, just the idea of trying to have such a high standard of how you should act. And he remembered going into a CQB situation with like his commander, and this guy, as soon as the door opened, come out of a doorway with a gun, and he just grabs the gun and holds it up in the air like this and just punches the guy and
crazy.
takes the AK from him.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, that's how good I want to be. I don't even want to have to shoot. He said, because if it had been me, I would have just went
Yeah.
and shot 3 rounds center mass, because that's what he's trained to do at the time.
Right.
Whereas he got to witness a guy who's at such a high level and he'd been in it for so long, he was just like, and just grabbed the, like as soon as he seen the barrel, because the guy hadn't seen him yet, he just grabs it and gets it away from him. Like
he didn't even think it.
no,
he just
did it. And that guy was like, that's the level I want to be at. And so it's not always about being violent back.
Oh,
it's
for
sometimes
sure,
just about trying to prevent violence.
I used to say it almost every day when I woke up when I was in high school, is strive to be perfect. You'll never be perfect.
No.
He said, but you can come off close.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of people like to argue that with, if you always strive for the perfect scenario, then you won't be ready for the scenarios that aren't perfect. Maybe a tiny bit of truth to that, but let's also say this though. The better that you get at something, the chances of it going perfect goes up by a long shot.
Yeah.
So it's not many times to where you're having to go back down to, baseline or below baseline. I mean, it's if we use the same principles that we find in the Bible about building our relationship with God, with anything, like I said, you'll never be perfect at anything, but you can become awful close. And that right there, that's the powerful part. That's when you're like, all right, I have not came across this scenario, but I've came across this scenario, and I made perfect out of 3 of them, or I made close enough. I said, I can do this.
Well, that even makes me, I want to argue that point. Somebody who goes, well, if you try to do perfect everything, then how are you going to be prepared for like a bad situation? If you're trying your hardest to be as good as you can be, you're going to have days that everything goes wrong.
Right.
And if you can achieve the best you can achieve on the days where everything goes wrong, like that's you preparing for the worst case scenario. The days where the range day we just had, once again, let me bring that up because it's easy for me to make references to. I'm trying out some new ammo, and dude, I was missing more shots on my long distance targets, or medium, I should say, than I think I've missed in over a year and a half. I was like, because like probably a year and a half ago, I was really starting to get those, like my holds and things figured out, and really understanding and knowing my rifle to its fullest with like where it's at currently. But then this weekend I was shooting and I was like, dude, I'm doing bad. And so now I'm having to rethink through it, and I've got some stuff I need to work on, and I know that. And so next time I'll be better.
Yeah.
Because this time it was kind of crap. I did kind of crap job compared to what I have traditionally. So, and that's, I'm saying that because like I normally have good days out there.
Right.
And so for me to have a really off day like that, like it's going to happen. But I tried my hardest the whole time.
Yeah.
So now I kind of know what I need to do to be better prepared next time. And
then the craziest part is the better you get at it, the less hard you have to try.
Oh yeah,
like that. That's a really weird saying.
Yeah,
but it's like I always think about all of us flipping the safeties.
Oh yeah,
all the time.
Yeah,
every single one of ours, my gun goes down, safety's off.
Yeah,
and it's like you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just happens.
There's moments now where I fire my last round. I know it's the last round I'm going to shoot.
Yeah,
I flick my safety on.
Yeah,
and I'm still gun up.
Yeah.
but it's back on.
I've got it now to where it's like pull the gun up, shoot my last round, safety will go off, drop mag, put a new bag in, reload, bring it back up, safety all goes back on.
Yeah.
And before I didn't do that, I just kept the safety on.
Right.
Dump mag. The chance of anything happening is pretty darn slim.
Right.
But just to know that like that kind of scenario is happening, it's like, hey, if I come around a corner and some guy's freaking out, or if it's one of y'all, y'all know, that gun's on safe. It ain't gonna do anything.
Well, I think there's a two-part to that. One is if you train with somebody like your friends, and and you all hold each other to a really high standard. Now, there's people who come and they train with us, and they're not the same level. Mm-hmm. And I think we have different days, and there's certain drills we don't do, and you don't even bring them up because we're not trying to make anybody feel or look bad.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, we know that they're not at the level that they need to be for us to be running those types of drills. But then there also is like the other side of that, where like when you do have a certain comfort level with these people and you are willing to push the limits where most people don't. Right. And so
it's like if anybody knows what the pill drill is, I mean, it's you've been taught your whole life, and it's still something like a very good set thing to be at.
Yeah.
But don't have anybody in front of like your line of fire.
Yeah.
Well, all this pill drill is you're retreating back to an area while there's fire going on.
Yeah.
So it's like rounds will be going down range, and somebody will be coming up. Now, obviously not right in front of the gun or anything like that. You try to avoid the gun, but you get in I understand now what people say when you get in like a flow state.
Yeah,
it's like everything else just is happening, and you're just doing your thing.
Yeah,
and it's like you have so much faith in your team. It's like I could run. I'm being dead serious, guys. I could run in front of this guy when he's doing a bill drill, and he'll stop safe on before I break right in front of the gun, and right behind it he could shoot again.
Yeah.
And it's like when you have that kind of mindset in your thing, that just takes so much more worrying out of the whole aspect. You can focus on what you're doing because you're not worrying about anybody else at this point. I'm not wondering if I'm getting shot in the back,
right,
or whatever it is.
I could reference two things, like the gnaw.
Oh yeah,
dude. We're talking about a dog right now. The gnaw.
My German Shepherd.
Dude, I was doing a bill drill one day, and I got 4 rounds off, and I see her flying through the air to try and bite my gun.
Yeah.
And I stopped, and I flicked on safe, and then she got out of the way, and I hurried up and shot the last 2.
Yeah.
And there's like that's being aware. But there is levels to that. So, like, it's not for everybody, and everybody has their own thing. And I'm not saying that you should go out and try and do this stuff if you don't feel comfortable. That's fine.
I think you could, though.
You probably could.
Yeah,
you probably could work your way up to that. Yeah. But I also think you need to do it with guys who you trust.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, I trust this guy beyond the range. You have to spend more time than just at the range, I think, to have that level of trust.
Yeah,
because, like, the guys that we look up to who do this stuff, I mean, they're living with each other on deployment.
Yeah.
For like a year at a time. If you live with somebody for a year at a time doing this stuff day in and day out, you're going to build that level of trust. You have to.
Right.
And I think that's the same way. It's like we spend so much time together outside of guns and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
That helps build that level of, like, I know you've got my back.
Right. And everybody's, that everybody's built to, kind of like what you said earlier, everybody's built to some level of a standard.
Yeah.
And your standard may be slightly different than my standard, or his standard might be differently to my standard.
Yeah.
But where that standard is still. Mm-hmm. I mean, hey, like for me, I'm not a long-range shooter. It's like, so Dylan's probably not the guy that needs to be on the long-range gun. It's like.
But even then, though, like I think about, this was my second example. I had said I had 2 examples. That, what was it, 6.5 PRC we had out there, and I was laid down kind of to the left up ahead of you.
Yeah.
And just a simple, hey, you good? I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
Fire away.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, because your gun's not going to go off track. Like, it's not going to do what people say, and it just takes its own route.
Yeah, no.
It's
if I'm 20 feet to the left,
yeah.
okay, and you're aiming way over here,
Yeah.
it's not like you're going to be like, the gun jumps out of your hand and then gets me.
Exactly. It's not like if you're shooting like a full auto. I've never shot it before, and it just goes, bah!
Right.
It's like you're shooting one single round.
Yeah, out of a bolt action.
Out of a bolt action
Yeah.
gun. It's like, that's why, bolt action guns is probably really good for the person that's never shot before.
Yeah.
Because you ever seen the videos like you give them like the semi-auto and they're like,
Well, dude, that's how that one person died.
That's crazy.
They gave their kid like a 8-year-old a MP5, full automatic, right out of their hand.
That's wild.
Got him. That's what I mean. That's been years ago now, but I remember hearing that story. And then that's the stuff though that creates fear. People who don't understand guns, like I can remember my mom was like, "Did you hear about that story where that kid got shot?" And, and then you actually read up on it, and you're like, "Well, there was a lot of things that could have gone better."
Yeah.
It's
like when you start working out and you take creatine.
Yeah.
And your mom's panicking that you're taking steroids. It's like, then you're like, you research it, she researches it, and you're like, nah, it's not.
Yeah.
It ain't really too bad.
This is not anabolic steroids.
Yeah, this is not trend or anything like this. I mean, it's just going to do a little bit good
right
for you in the end. I wonder how much, like, patience is not really a word that you think of when you're shooting guns. But there is a level of you.
Yeah.
Because that's something that you can get frustrated with really quickly.
Well, I think about that. You want to talk about a high level of patience. I know people who, like, if we were shooting like this weekend and they were missing as much as I missed almost a whole mag worth trying to figure out where these things were impacting. And I couldn't really see the splash, so I'm just having to kind of guess where I'm going. And it's windy, so maybe that affected it, maybe it didn't. But there's some people who'd be like, "Oh, I'm done. This stupid gun."
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I'm doing something way wrong right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was just puzzling, just racking my brain trying to figure out where I was going wrong versus the last time. So I had 100% patience. I'm going to sit there until I get it figured out. And I still didn't get it figured out. I've got to do more work now to figure out what was going on.
How did you said that and I've seen it, that you've worked on over the years, you get better at being patient. How did you realize that you weren't? Was it that you realized it, or did you have a talk with a mentor and somebody kind of told you that, or was it?
I think
because that was one thing that people would say, I have too much patience sometimes, and I definitely think that's a thing, because I'll just see stuff and I'm like, nah. And it's like my wife hates that I have so much patience. She's like, you need to get on about that, and I'm just like. But that's I'm always interested in how people that didn't have it start creating.
I think early on I figured out that I was a pretty angry person. I dealt with that a lot, is being angry.
You think that's the number one counter to patience? Most of the times anger?
Yes, probably, yeah. And it's people's easiest emotion to express, I think, out
Very
of
good point.
losing patience. Like, it's the easiest one to be like, I'm pissed because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
They've lost patience with it. And it's like, getting pissed is easy. Stopping and thinking it through, that's not as easy.
That's not as easy.
And then having just a positive outlook the whole time, that's even harder. But I think I did have some key moments growing up where like I got tripped one time, and then like my teacher was going to write me up, and like I lost it. Like,
she wrote you up for being tripped?
So no. So let me give a shout out to Mr. Mac, because he is the GOAT.
Yeah.
All right. So we were
gangster of all time.
We're in Mac's class, and we were always acting a fool, so that doesn't help. But he goes, "All right, if anybody makes another sound, I'm writing you up for D-Hall." Well, I had to get up to go get my bag so I could do my work. And one of the guys in the class tripped me, and I fell into like 6 desks. Makes a huge crashing noise. He goes, "That's a D-Hall." I went ballistic. I cussed everybody in there out. I told them that like they better watch their back because I'm gunning for everybody. And like I probably like screamed and ranted for like minutes and minutes on end. Okay. And then finally I went and just sat down all the way by myself at the other end of the classroom and started drawing to pass time. Because at this point I didn't care. I wasn't doing anything. I was gonna do what I wanted to do at that point. I was so pissed.
Yeah, right.
And they were like, everybody was so shocked. I remember the look on everybody's face was pure shock. And like Mr. Mack sent like everybody out of the class except for me and the boys. Because the other guys are who caused the problem.
Yeah.
And he was like, what was that? I was like, that's not my fault.
Yeah,
I'm like, you're going to write me up for something that was out of my control.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, I have nothing else to say.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, I don't think it's that serious. I'm like, but it is. I'm like, you're going to get me in trouble for something that I didn't even start.
Right.
And because I think he probably thought I was just being goofy.
Yeah.
But I was dead serious. And so it wasn't until I lost it that everybody understood how serious I was.
Right.
But looking back on it, like.
Did you still have to go to D-Hall?
Oh, no.
Oh,
he ended up sending everybody out at one point because like I pretty much just shut down. And he was like, he's like, blah, blah, blah. Like he was asking me questions. I'm like, nope. I was like, I don't care. And he was like, oh my gosh, like this dude's like,
he's serious.
He's dead. I was dead serious. And I was like, look, there's only one way that this is going to be better. I was like, I'm not going to D-Hall.
Yeah.
I was like, that's ridiculous. And at this point, I was still like irate.
Right.
And he was like, all right. He's like, I'll tear it up. And he tore it up and threw it away. I'm like, all right.
Shout out.
I'm like, we're cool. Yeah, Mr. Mack, he was a G.
Yeah.
But I said, are you going to snitch on me? And he was like, what do you mean?
Snitch on you?
Yeah. I said, are you going to go tell Mr. Ramsey? I think he was the principal at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm not going to tell him. I'm like, bro, you're going to lose my freaking trust if you tell him.
I was about to say, you're negotiating with a teacher right now, and you're in what, 6th grade?
Middle school for sure.
Yeah.
And so hilarious. I'm like, dude, I'm telling you right now. I'm like, if I hear about this, I'm like,
I will burn your house.
I was like, we're not cool now.
That's hilarious.
And I remember he was like, dude, I'm not going to say anything. And I'm like, all right, I'm trusting you. And my dad, out of all the days for us to get picked up from school, that was one of the days that my dad picked us up.
Yeah.
Well, he had to go get my younger brother. And while we're waiting, Mr. Ramsey walks up to the...
No shot.
He walks up to Old Blue, as we called it, the Silverado.
Yeah.
Old Cat Eye Chevy. And he was like, hey, I heard it got a little heated today in class. And I'm like, oh, did you?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
He was like, hey, do we need to, do you need somebody to talk to, this or that? Like, he was...
your dad there, too?
I don't think he'd walked up yet.
Okay,
I think it was just me and Mr. Ramsey. And like, so I'm trying to wrap this up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the funny part about me is like, I try to keep everything under wraps. Like I've always tried to handle everything myself. Which is funny because like, it's my parents' job to know what's going on.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah.
I don't want to cause them any stress. So I'm just going to handle everything like an adult.
Right.
And so I'm literally like hashing it out with Mr. Ramsey, trying to hurry this process up.
Yeah.
And I think, like right as we're wrapping it up, like Mel walks up and he was like, all right. He's like, we'll see you later. And I get in the truck and looking back on it, I see what happened, but they used to be friends in school. They went to school together. And so
your dad and
Mr. Ramsey.
Oh, gotcha.
Chad. And they was talking and I thought, because Mr. Ramsey, the way he greeted him just sounded like, hey, how's it going, Mel?
Yeah.
Everything's cool. But I'm sure there was a slight exchange. But
did you go back to Mr. Mack?
I'm trying to remember what I said. I think I did go back and I said, dog. I was like,
I don't trust you.
I was like, we're not as cool as we were.
Yeah.
And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, freaking Mr. Ramsey come up to me.
You go, I know.
And now I'm saying this, I sound like Tom Segura's kids. Like, I was crazy, dog. But
You better watch yourself.
Yeah, dude.
yeah.
You better watch your back.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But like, I really was throwing straight up like some like threats and stuff around. And it's amazing. Like, I didn't get in bad trouble over it, but like, I was dead serious because I felt like I was the one who got wronged.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, if everybody wants to be against me, this is how it's going to be. And so
that's crazy.
And I think from that point on, that was the point which people started calling me crazy.
Gotcha.
Like that, there was a phase I went through where people thought I was like, they were like, John's crazy, don't mess with John. And like, that's why I didn't get in a lot of fights, is because like I said crazy stuff.
And then what did you say? You might have already said this. Was there a moment to when you were like,
oh yeah, that was the whole overarching question.
I need to start chilling out. Or what brought you to that moment?
There was a point where I thought maybe I sound a little bit too violent of a person. Maybe I need to toggle that back a little bit. Like,
was there something that brought that on, or was it just kind of
no? I think I just kind of like one day I was thinking on it, and I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't talk like that anymore. But then I didn't really phase out of it yet. I wasn't really ready to be out of that phase, and so just recently, a few years back, I really recognized that I was going through a spell where I was trying to like, I feel like act tough. And that's why like I see people who try to act tough today, and if I call them on it, they're like, nah, dude. They're like, that's just that's the kind of guy I am. And
right.
Like, no, you're not.
Right.
Because I was there at one point. I know what you're trying to act hard.
Yeah, you're just angry.
Whereas like I remember being to the point where like I was like threatening people, like, and I was serious. Like, there's a big difference.
Right.
So, like, I do have kind of a scale to weigh it against. And so, but just a few years ago, like, I remember I was trying to write a narrative for people. Like, I wanted people to understand that I was tougher than I felt like everybody made me look. And so everybody was like, John, he's such a nice guy.
Right.
And people still say that today. And they're like, he's such a loving person with a big heart. And I do, and I am those things. But at a certain point, I feel like that's all people seen. And so I remember the point in which I started trying to like be more aggressive out of the fact to like, I want you to show me respect because I'm not just like a pushover. Like, oh, he's a big lovey guy, I'm going to push him around. No, I'm not going to get pushed around. You're going to freaking show me respect, and things are going to go a certain type of way. And so when I started trying to push that narrative, I think I was doing it too much. And so just a couple years ago, I thought, man, am I still letting that happen?
Right.
And I think. And when I finally became 100% aware of my actions, because I think that's the thing. I think you could be doing stuff subconsciously. You don't realize it.
Oh, you don't, for 1,000%.
And so when I realized what I was up to and what the stuff I was doing, I was like, man, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. And that's who I'm making these people think I am. Like, I don't talk like I need to quit that. And so, and I thought, like, dude, I sound like an idiot. Like, that's that's a huge part of it. When you realize how stupid you sound.
Right.
Now, there are certain things that I said, people knew I was serious, and, like, they don't sound stupid. I just should probably go to jail.
That's wild.
But there are certain things where I'm like, I sound like an idiot. And that's how people get away with this stuff. Like, if somebody knows they can push your buttons to get a rise out of you.
Sure.
And so there's moments like that in life where I realize that's what people are up to.
Oh, people love doing that. Like, pushing buttons is one of the funnest things to some people.
So once I figured that out, that was a big turning point as well. And so some people learn the hard way, though.
We need to, I'm interested. We need to keep carrying this conversation on. We're running out of time right now. But I need to write that down because why is that is the question. What are people, because I want to dive deep into this, because what are people getting out of that?
I think there's some level of enjoyment, actually.
That's crazy.
Like they
oh my God.
So
that's wild. Well, John Boy, finishing up with that.
Yeah.
Do you got anything you want to say to the people out there about patience? Because you're the one that has overcome it more than I've seen anybody else.
just try to be more self-aware. And we talk about that all the time, and just really analyzing who you are. Who do you want to be perceived as? And at the end of the day, if there's somebody getting a rise out of you, don't be around them.
Yeah.
And quit interacting. If they start in and you feel your blood pressure starting to get up, which happens to me, just leave.
Just leave.
Don't even interact with them.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest punch in their face. So that's a big piece of advice I think I can give anybody. Hopefully that helps somebody. Try to be more like Jesus and read the good book, or just a good role model, even if you don't want to go down the road of faith.
The good guy.
Try to find a good guy and model yourself after that. And I think once you start to do those things and realize that, and that's like my grandpa had a crazy story, maybe I'll reference it sometime, and he's kind of got that same, that's kind of one of my role models.
Yeah.
And the guy I knew was just the nicest guy, full of love. So that's what we need more of in this world, people to love each other and to be connected. So try and do that. And that's all I got.
Amen. Well, guys, this has been Skeptics Podcast 27.
27.
It's been a good one. We're going to have to keep following up on these conversations because these are the ones that really, really interested me. So, yeah. Hope everybody out there has a good rest of your day.
Yes.
Go out there, love somebody, and
make today worth it.
Make today worth it. It's my old one. Later, guys.
Later.